Star Wars has been a franchise that's always meant a lot to me. It's one of the films that really inspired me to do what I do today, which is make film and television. I mean, there were other films that I loved growing up, but no film that sort of compelled me more to want to be a part of the industry than Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. They're two of my favorite films of all time. Even, at the time, I was very upset that Star Wars lost Best Picture to Annie Hall. Now I'm sort of on the fence about it. I could take it either way. So I'm thrilled to be part of the Star Wars Roundtable with a bunch of other Star Wars luminaries. I think it was a really great evening. Kyle Newman from Fanboys. We had Steve Melching from the Clone Wars, Ashley Eckstein, and Chris Gossett, a staple of Geek Magazine. And I hope the Force will be with us as new Star Wars movies come to theaters in 2015. I cannot wait. So, look, once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, we all saw Star Wars for the first time. Let's talk about your first time. Because for anyone who loves Star Wars, it's such a seminal moment, I think such an important part of all our childhoods. So let's start with you, Kyle. What was your first Star Wars memory?
No one believes it, but it was late in the summer of '77. I was born in '76, so I was really young. And I don't remember the movie, I don't believe. I remember just the energy of my cousins. Everyone went to see it at a drive-in theater in New Jersey. And I just remember this crazy electric energy. Everyone in my family, there were like 20 different family members, aunts, uncles, and we were all there, and everyone was just buzzing. And then after that, I could just start pronouncing Star Wars names before human names. People would show me the back of an action figure card, and I'd be like, boom, boom, hammer, Greeter, and I'd be like, who is this weird kid? And if you brought a Star Wars figure in the house, I could sniff it out, and I was like, two. They got me a do-bag, and they hit it, and I just knew it was in the house, so I just found it. And I think the first maybe conscious sitting down watching was probably, I guess, maybe Empire, but I don't know how I was struck by it even without really remembering the movie, but I was sold before I think Empire even came out, and I wasn't even 4, so I had this weird Star Wars addiction. And then we were at a theater in New Jersey at a mall, and we're waiting in this long line. There's a bookstore right near the theater, so my brother walks over and he's flipping through one of the books. I'm like, oh, I'll do that too. I looked through it, and one of the first words that I saw was, what's going on with Yoda and a lot of the revelations, and I was like, oh, why did I do that?
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but I have to get this on the record.
Yeah.
When I was in junior high school, some asshole named Lance Shulman says, hey, you gotta look at this. It was the illustrated comic book adaptation of Empire Strikes Back. I said, what is it, Lance? He said, just read it. And I open it up, and it's Darth Vader going, I am your father. And I'm like, you fucking asshole. You fucking asshole. I mean, it came out like 2 weeks before the movie. Before the internet, so, spoilers didn't get out there. And I almost killed him. I couldn't believe it. So it didn't ruin it because Empire was still amazing. But I could not believe that. Talk about the ultimate spoiler. The stupid comic book adaptation.
But you know what? When it came to say Phantom Menace, I embraced the spoilers because I didn't look at Star Wars anymore as a movie so much as it was the mythology and the story. So maybe I was ruining it for 2 years by following every little tidbit in story, but I kind of felt I had an idea of what it was, so I didn't go in and I wasn't shocked like some people.
Right.
I accepted it for the mythology more than I was judging it all at once.
See, I was shocked. I was shocked at how bad it was, but...
that's its own part.
That's right, okay.
I like it. I could probably write a book about why I like it. I wrote a good article in Star Wars Insider.
Yes, you did.
Defending the prequels. And we do a panel, too, at Star Wars Celebrations where we defend the prequels. Not so much defend the prequels, but we
make a case for why you love it.
The saga as a whole,
mm-hmm.
and how all the episodes work together and how they enhance each other. And there are a lot of things, if you sit down and revisit them, you find that there are these rhythmic patterns and story patterns and these structure that are really deep and really smart. So they're better films than people give them credit.
Yeah, I think it's good, just for the people watching at home, or that I didn't front load the panel with a bunch of people, like-minded people.
True.
Because Steve also is an apologist. I mean, he also loves he likes the prequels and defend them. So I think that's good because often you'll have a bunch of people who will sit there.
They'll agree the whole time.
Rant, right? Oh, that was the fucking worst. Yeah, all right, sure. And I think it's great that we actually can hear the other side of the argument, and we respect the other side of the argument. Yeah, sort of. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Come on.
Oh, my first
Steve
time.
Melton, yeah, let's talk about your first time.
Yes, well, I was 9 years old when the first Star Wars came out, and had already developed an appreciation for science fiction on television, watching original Star Trek and Star Trek animated series, $6 Million Man, Land of the Lost, all that kind of stuff. And I remember that summer, we were living in Hawaii at the time, and my dad brought out the Honolulu Observer newspaper and showed me these pictures of C-3PO and R2-D2, and he said, oh, there's this new movie coming out called Star Wars, would you like to see it? And I looked at the picture and I thought, Star Wars? That's kind of a cheesy sounding title, I don't know, I just wasn't that into it. But it became this big phenomenon, so my parents took me and my sister into Honolulu to the one movie theater in town that I was playing in, because back in those days, you know, wide release, you didn't have these, you know, movies playing on thousands of screens at once. It was in, you know, this one theater, and we got there for whatever the show time was, like the 1 o'clock show or something.
You don't remember?
It was sold out. And this had never happened to us before. Like, we'd never gone to a movie that was sold out. So we got our tickets for the next show and got in line on this, you know, standing out on the sidewalk. And I remember standing there for, you know, 2 or 3 hours waiting for the next show.
Right.
And looking at the lobby card display that they had, those original Star Wars lobby cards. And the one that I always remember is that one with the sand trooper on the dewback, that classic thing. And I thought,
The one that wasn't in the movie.
barely,
Yeah.
yeah, but I thought, that thing looks cool. I mean, it's like a kind of like a dinosaur thing, and there's this cool white armor, and he's all kind of beat up looking, like, oh, I wonder what this is. And we got in the theater and took our seats, and the movie started, and my jaw dropped, and it stayed dropped for 2 hours. My mind was literally blown watching it. My whole life felt transformed after watching that movie.
And was it? It really seems like it was.
It totally was.
Because, I
absolutely.
mean, here you are writing, you know, for Star Wars, and
It absolutely changed the course of my life. Prior to that, you know, as a kid, growing up, you know, the usual little boy things. What are you going to be when you grow up? You know, and I thought, I want to dig up dinosaur bones. I'm going to be a paleontologist, and that was going to be my thing. And then I remember watching Star Trek reruns on TV and reading the credits and realizing, this is a job. People make this stuff for television. That's a job, like fireman or policeman or doctor or whatever. And the only credit I understood was written by. I didn't know what a producer was or a director.
right.
Maybe I could write for television. Then I saw Star Wars and I thought, I gotta do that. I gotta, who's this George Lucas guy? And I sought out everything I could find about the making of the film, bought all the magazines and read all the interviews with George and the, you know, the producers and stuff, and set the course of my life.
It's funny, we always mix our metaphors, because we always say, it was sort of like Close Encounters, we all heard the clarion call of Devil's Tower, and some people made it out and made their mashed potato mountains, and some people didn't, you know, but Star Wars was that, it was like that, you know, the call in Close Encounters is so many of us. I mean, Kyle's making movies, you know, obviously you're acting in films, Chris is starting to make movies now, I mean, obviously I've made films, so and Star Wars is such a big part of that lore. I mean, that, you know, that imagination, creativity.
You can't underestimate the sort of the seismic shock that movie had when it opened, the impact that it had on society. It was so, there never really been anything, I don't think, quite like it. Granted that we were children at the time it came out, but, you know, just the impact it had on every films, television, you know, merchandise. I mean, it was just, that movie played in theaters for a year, you know, a solid year or more.
And then I mean, you went back, because at the time, the VHS didn't exist yet, and you'd go back when it was released. I mean, I'm sure you all went, or maybe the older ones, you know, when Episode 4 was added, when it was changed from Star Wars to Episode 4 New Hope, I went just to see the new crawl. I mean, now I look back and say, what a fucking idiot I was. But it's true. I mean, it was so exciting. So anyway, Ashley, tell us about seeing Star Wars, your introduction to the saga.
You know, I don't have as exciting of a story, of an in-theater story. I was born in '81, so obviously I missed, you know, New Hope. But what I do remember specifically, and I was so young, I don't even remember exactly how old I was, but is the scene with R2-D2 and C-3PO and Tatooine, or through the desert.
You mean the cover of the story of Star Wars 33 vinyl album? That shot?
Yeah, and I just remember, of course I loved Princess Leia, but I loved R2-D2 so much, and I wanted to be R2-D2. Like when I would play it with my siblings, I wanted to be R2-D2 instead. And those are my memories, is watching on VHS
Mhm.
at home, and obviously we had all the movies, so it was just something that was just there. It was a part of our childhood. And then I think the most defining moment for me is not necessarily the movies opening, but I was a Disney kid. My dad worked for Disney. I grew up in Orlando, and when Star Tours, the ride opened, with my dad being an employee, we got to go to Disney all the time for free. I mean, literally. So we went the week that the ride opened. And that was a big moment for me, realizing the impact that ride had, and being a part of something so special at such a young age was just pretty incredible.
I'm really glad that you mentioned Star Tours. I think it's such a seminal part of the merchandising of Star Wars. I mean, to me, there's sort of like key milestones, like the early bird kit that Kenner put out, you know, where you were literally getting a box for Christmas with no characters because they couldn't keep up with the demand. But the Star Tours is amazing because it didn't break the fourth wall, which I thought was great for a ride, and it created like a new part of the mythology. And those posters were fantastic.
The travel posters.
The travel posters. I think it's unique that, you know, a property like this, it sort of fans the passion. And it's maybe one of the reasons, we'll talk about this, why Star Wars continues to endure, and after all these years, Disney would pay this amount of money, and that the franchise would have this new renaissance. But yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned Star Tours. So let's talk about your first time, and then I want to talk about, because you touched on something, the expansiveness of the Star Wars universe, which is so important to why it's continued to endure all these years. But let's talk about Star Wars.
I feel really fortunate to have been in Los Angeles at that time, in the industry, an industry kid.
Were you 2?
No, I was 9 years old, like you see.
Okay,
And my dad always got these SAG magazines because he was in the guild.
right.
And I always looked through the SAG magazines. I understood every 5th word, maybe every 12th word, depending on the article. But 1 month, in comes this shot with 3PO behind Luke. Luke's looking for the sand people down below, and I'm like, what the heck is this one? And I go in and I read it, and and they're talking about Dykstra, and they're talking about this is an amazing thing, and I remember from that moment just that one image that I have to see this, and there was no internet at the time, so my poor mother, I just walk up to her.
It's so funny we have to keep saying that. There was no internet at the time. You know, it's like people, why did you go on the internet?
That's what you do when you go over the
There was
hills.
Viewmaster for 3D. So.
Poor Mom, Star Wars, find me more information about this. Something about the Star Wars, all right. She worked at the Times, luckily, and the Times had printed the novelization,
Right.
as part of the pre-marketing before release. So she got me all those, and I read all those. Again, understanding every 12th word. But this is the thing, and Mom said, so are you liking it? Are you liking the Star Wars thing? What's it all about? And I said, it's a space, and there's knights and stuff. And she said, hey, why don't you draw them? Why don't you draw
Right.
what you see? Because Mom was always trying to find an excuse to get me to draw. And I did. I remember drawing Obi-Wan Kenobi before I ever saw the film. I wish I still had that drawing, but
You can sell on eBay for a lot more.
but that was my first memory of Star Wars. And my father was great. Whenever there was a movie he wanted to see or we wanted to see, we could stay home that day and go see it.
So no school. You
No
went to
school.
see-
Went to the Chinese. It was a madhouse.
Yeah,
And
right.
Dad-
We've all seen the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a mob. And so so we saw it at the Fox.
Uh-huh,
And
okay.
we loved it.
In Westwood.
No, the Fox on Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, right, okay.
At the time. Now
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
it's, I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, now it's a crack den.
Exactly, right. But so we saw it. It was amazing. We're like, when Mom gets off, we're going back to the Chinese. So we went to the Chinese, bought
Right.
tickets for the later show. Grabbed Mom. Mom's exhausted coming home from work while her husband and sons are out watching movies, right? And Mom's exhausted. Come on, Mom, you're gonna love it. And we went to the Chinese. She loved it, and I remember that night falling asleep. And it was the first. I gotta give some Ben Burt love right here. That was the first and only film that I laid my head on my pillow and I could hear Ben Burt's cues in my mind. I could hear them.
Right.
I could hear the lasers and some of the zooms from the TIE fighters. It was amazing.
Star Wars just captures me on such a deep level, an emotional level, mythological level, spiritual level, and it's something that's stuck with me through my entire life, and I think that's profound. That something can do that, and you can connect with something like that, and you meet fans all over the world that have that same experience, no matter what language they speak, no matter where they're from, no matter how old they are, and it just feels like you have this shared experience. So it's very magical, it's incredible, and I wouldn't be a filmmaker if it wasn't for Star Wars.